A listener with the open collar and the regular tie, hope of being the smartest person in your category. You just have to tune in for a few minutes every day to me, David Tulis, the editor of Nooganomics.com, the blogger with the biggest pen in Chattanooga. That's me, the pen being 180 feet tall, pulsating out powerful amplified modulation through land and through air here in Chattanooga, 1240 AM and 92.7 FM. There's a great event coming up, a couple of just beyond a week, outside of a week away from us today, and that's next Friday, not tomorrow, but next Friday, 2 Fridays out, the 21st and the 22nd. It's the Homeschool Expo in Chattanooga, which offers free market solutions to, you might say, the constipation of progressive theory, where nothing passes anymore. There is tension, heat, and friction everywhere in the world of administration and bureaucracy. So the free market sector and homeschooling has come up with alternative ways of doing it yourself, using things that are largely free and widely available. The internet is available. So why do we have public schools? Anyway, it is inexpensive to get in. 2 days at Camp Jordan in East Ridge, $8 per family to get in. It's Friday, 9 o'clock. That's the 21st of July. And then the next day, Saturday, the 22nd, 9 a.m. Going most of the day for both days. David Tulis here. Now, there are some gnawing feelings you have sometimes on your ankle, and you're in business, and those gnawing, gnarling, growling sounds and sensations from your lower parts are kind of out of view because you're looking ahead and looking at your customers and you're sitting at your desk. But those are hidden costs in your business. And if you want to ask a question about finding some of these costs in your business, give us a call here at 800-8949. That's 800-8949. And Dennis Schraoder will answer these questions. He runs Nova Advisors. He is from White House, Tennessee, just 20 minutes north of Nashville, and he's expanding his service here in Chattanooga. His name is Dennis Schraoder, and his job is, his task is to find costs in your business and to make you aware of them. And how do you pay him? Well, you don't have to pay him until these savings are found, and then he shares. Well, you share some small portion of that savings with him. That's his reward for having found them and brought them to your attention. So, Dennis, you're kind of an auditor and analyst and provide services to small business people like my listener. Explain how you got into this field and in a nutshell what you do.
Okay, great. Thank you, David. Yes, well, I have a history of having run a small business. Most of my career has been in the Army. I was a medical service corps officer for 24 years. Had run a small business in the state of Washington as a property manager. Have wound up here in Tennessee, made Tennessee my home. And I was looking for ways to help people who were like myself. That is a business that had a great idea, looking to grow and to take that vision and make it a reality. The opportunity presented itself to me to network with some folks that are highly specialized in certain areas that when I was exploring this, I was completely unaware as a business owner that some of these costs were hidden from me, and that I could have had a better cash flow in my business had somebody come along and said, "Hey, let's take a look at this area." We audit a variety of areas depending upon the business, depending upon its size, depending upon what you do, and we find ways to reduce those costs, find errors in the billing process, and prevent those errors from continuing into the future.
Well, Dennis Schroeder, how likely is it for there to be an error in a bill? You have a phone bill, you have a utility bill. It says how many kilowatts you used on the latter one, and here's the charge from EPB. How can there be room for improvement on that?
Well, it depends upon where you are and where if there are certain places in the country where you have competition in the utility arena. In waste management, there are all sorts of codes that are used that, as a business owner, I was not aware of what those codes meant. There are often more than half the time that we audit some of these bills for our clients, we find that there are errors. There are overcharges that are being made in these areas. And as a business owner, I was not aware of and phone bills. I wasn't aware in credit card processing fees that how to read those and what those meant and whether those were appropriate to me and my business. And that's why networking with highly skilled specialists that have been doing this for 10 to 15 years is extremely beneficial to my clients.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Dennis Schraoder, who runs Nova Advisors. Well, Dennis, let me ask you this. My listener runs a business. Let's just erect here for as a theoretical, as an example, what my listener does and how you would interact with him and deal with his expenses.
Okay, absolutely. Well, let's say that I'll take my own background and experience, and let's say that John has been running a property management business for several years. He does some residential property management and he does some commercial property management mixed together. I'd sit down with him, or we actually just sometimes can have a conversation over the phone and through a web portal and ask a few questions and say, do you own any commercial property? And the answer is yes, he has. He's gone into partnership with some other local folks, and they've bought a couple of commercial buildings. I'd ask what the total purchase cost on that was, and let's say it was $2,300,000. And we ask if they've done any renovation costs. I know that tenant improvements, when I had a small property management company for a very small area, was $50,000. Let's say it was $80,000 for the property that he has. I would ask if what sort of property taxes do you pay? $30,000 or more in property tax? And let's say the answer to that is yes, and that he's paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $42,000 or $43,000 annual property taxes. I'd ask how many new employees, including replacements, do you hire per year? Let's say that in his operation he has about 60 employees, and that he's expanding, and John is looking to hire more people, and he's anticipating that he'll have like 20 new employees per year for his operation. And that's all I need to ask, and I can tell him right now that we estimate that we could save him $201,394.
Is that a one-time deal, or is that per year?
Well, his savings for the commercial property is the largest part of that, and that would be about $170,000, and that's a one-time savings. The property tax estimated savings is $7,194, and that would be ongoing. That would be from the point of our making the analysis and making the argument to the taxing authorities, and that would carry forward every year. The hiring tax incentive would be $24,000 per year, and that would be ongoing as well. So, and this is just one of our tools. I have another tool that looks at the auditing. We look at workers' comp payments that they're making. We look at if they're taking credit cards. Now, John, being in property management, wouldn't be in the credit card processing or receiving business very much, but he would have.
Is that because tenants pay by check generally?
Most tenants pay by check, and typically the charges for accepting credit cards is each way into the profit margins that property managers.
And what is generally the charge for a credit card transaction?
Typically, I mean, it's going to vary based upon the card, but typically anywhere from 2 to 4%. And if I'm operating on a margin where I'm charging 8 to 10%, then that's taking a huge chunk out of my operating budget, and that's typically why somebody in this scenario, John, who's got the property management business, will not be taking credit cards for that. But in other areas, we can take a look at accounts payable. If he's got a business of this size, if he's got $5 million in accounts payable, we can transition some of that into a situation where he's paying with a credit card to his business-to-business vendors, and convert about 15 to 30% of that into a virtual credit card processing, where then he gets the benefit of getting a rebate from that, typically in the range of...
So he won't accept credit cards, but he will pay by credit card to his suppliers.
Correct. And that's exactly what I did when I was running my business.
And what does that do again, Dennis Schraoder?
So that...
what does that do to do it that way? To use credit cards to pay?
Okay. What that does, number one, it reduces your operating costs. If we can convert some of the vendors that you are paying currently by check or ACH to a virtual card, your costs for employees having to write out those checks to process those those transactions is reduced substantially. The paying by check is absolutely the most expensive way of paying your vendors, but we also know that not every vendor is going to want to absorb those fees that the credit card will charge.
You don't want to absorb them, and some vendors may agree with you not to absorb them either.
Correct, but we know that on average 15 to 30% of the vendors that you have will. And in fact, we have about 65,000 vendors across the country currently who are on our virtual card platform and have been using it for years and are very happy to do that. And some of your vendors may actually be on that list, and you're just not getting the benefit of getting that the 150 basis points back to you.
So now we're talking here. We're still in a kind of a sales meeting of why my listener, John, what you've called him, should agree to have Nova Advisors come in and sniff around in his business.
Correct. Absolutely. So,
so he's going to say, probably he's going to say yes. What do you tell him next?
Well, what we tell him next is we show him exactly how we obtained how we identified those savings in the property tax arena, for example. Basically what we're going to do is to review the property taxes owed, and we're going to look at potential refunds on prior taxes. Our team works on your behalf. In fact, we will actually send attorneys, if we need to court on your behalf to argue the case. And a lot of places that we find that where this is pertinent are commercial properties that have parking lots. And oftentimes the municipality will tax you at a higher rate than the parking lot should be taxed at. There are other examples as well, but
so you're saying the parking lot should be taxed at a lower rate because it is just inert pavement, whereas the building has activity and would be taxed at a higher rate.
Exactly.
And the owner of both doesn't know that, and so he just pays the tax as if it's the lots of equal value to the building.
Exactly.
And that's a mistake.
And that's a mistake.
And you're going to find
it. Exactly. Because as you know, from my experience having been that owner, it's like I assumed that every charge I got from from the municipality, from the workers' comp charges, etc., that everything was correct, and oftentimes they're not. We show them in the cost segregation on the commercial property. One of the biggest challenges with commercial property is how you depreciate that property, and most CPAs are not engineers and therefore are not capable of going in, taking a look at your structure and your building and the improvements you've made, and being able to come up with that engineering cost segregation, which is required to get the fastest depreciation on that property. Which is, and in this case, John would see a savings of $170,000, and our fee in this, we describe how we do that, and the fee would not exceed 10% of the established savings. Similarly, with the hiring incentives, the Workers' Opportunity Tax Credit, as it's now called, we demonstrate how we do that, why it's faster and easier from the standard process that's currently in place, because we use a software solution to make it accurate and speedy, timely, and the workers' opportunity tax credit, as it's now called, we demonstrate how we do that, why it's faster and easier from the standard process that's currently in place, because we use a software solution to make it accurate and timely, and so that you can make that decision as the law requires before you actually make a hiring decision, and state what our fees are. We have a small monthly fee for the software, depending upon the number of hires that you anticipate, and our fee is 15% of the total tax credit that was actually received. And there are other folks in the industry, but typically they're charging 25 to 35%, and the process is not as fast as ours. So we go through that whole process, and then we identify a time for the business owner to have a more in-depth conversation with the service provider that that's going to actually do this work. We identify the actual savings. We have them sign an agreement to simply look at those costs, and we're good to go.
So you've made the sale. You've engaged the listener. He has agreed. Nova Advisors at Nova Advisors, that's ORS, NovaAdvisors.us, will look into his business, kind of mind his business, with the goal of finding these savings. Now, you mentioned the building depreciation. That's important only if you have physical structures?
That's correct. I mean, if you
things like vehicles or equipment.
We're talking in here specifically about owning commercial property. And I mean, I'm using this as an example. Like I said, that's where we find commercial property owners typically can find the biggest cost savings on a one-time basis. But the others are just as important. As a startup, when I was just getting started, the workers' opportunity tax credit would have made a huge difference for me. You know, I had 4 employees, an extra $10,000 in my pocket that first year would have been huge for me. So it doesn't really matter what size of a business that we're talking about. It doesn't really matter where you're at in the process. If you're an established business, we can help you. If you're just starting up, if you're looking at hiring people, we can help you there too.
I do appreciate your giving us a couple of minutes of your time. We're here with Dennis Schraoder of Nova Advisors. His website is NovaAdvisors.us, and that's advisor correctly spelled with an O. Nova Advisors with an O. NovaAdvisors.us. He is a cost auditor and analyst. He is a business savings advisor. That's the term he prefers to use as he describes what he does. He lives north of Nashville, but is trying to find people here in Chattanooga whom he can help in the business sector, sniffing out from all your bills, all your major expenses, and helping you sometimes by legal action getting money back or cutting your expenses. So our regular bills, Dennis Schraoder, are often wrong. Utility bills, credit card bills, do they often have mistakes? And how can the listener identify whether they might be there or not?
Well, that's the issue that I had when I was a business owner, is that I didn't know whether there were mistakes in there. And yes, they were long. Your phone bill, if you print it out, I mean, my personal phone bill for myself is like 28 pages in length every month. As a business, it's going to be a lot longer than that. Those that accept credit cards, those can be 250 pages or more every single month. And I don't know about you, David, but I certainly didn't have the time nor the expertise to be able to go through all those and be able to ferret out what those codes meant and whether those were correct for me or not.
Now, in your business, you have to hire people to do some of this work for you. Do they work on a percentage as well, or do they demand cash up front? And that's an expense for your business as Nova Advisors.
So the folks that we use are specialists in this industry, in the specific areas that we're talking about. So somebody who's going to be looking at your phone bills, your credit card bills, is going to be different than the person that's going to be doing the cost segregation study. Each of them, the costs that I quote, all the costs are rolled up into that. So they're basically taking that, say, 10% for the cost segregation study, and they get paid out of that, and I get paid out of that.
And so your Dennis is 61 years old, a former military medical man, a small businessman, and he is working now as an advisor. So, what in a nutshell, what's the reason that my listener should take seriously the kind of work you do, and perhaps without any upfront cost to himself, engage you, Dennis?
The reason is that there may be costs in your operation that you're just not aware of that we can uncover for you. You can spend 15 minutes with me on the phone, in person, or over a web portal, and we can identify places we think we can help you.
How can the listener get a hold of you, Dennis?
My number is 888-551-6530. That's 888-551-6530.
Dennis Schraoder.of Nova Advisors, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
This is David Tulis. Make sure you attend the Homeschool Expo. Put it on your calendar. It is July 21 and 22. That's next weekend, not this coming weekend, but next at Camp Jordan in East Ridge. A homeschool expo with advice, all kinds of educational gadgets, games, software, books, all kinds of wonderful things for educational purposes. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. The Tennessee Valley's news.